Good morning, everyone. Thanks for being here. I know folks are still taking their seats, but I'm just going to get us kicked off so we can hear from our amazing panelists, which is why I know you're all here this morning. So I'm Katherine Klosek, Director of Information Policy and Federal Relations at ARL. But you are here to hear from our illustrious panelists. So Brett Bobley, Advisor, Schmidt Sciences. Sharon Burney, Program Officer, Council on Library and Information Resources, CLEAR. Kaffie Milikin, Director of Development, Library of Congress. Ross Mounce, Director of Open Access, Arcadia, who's joining us virtually. Thank you. And Plato Smith, Program Director, U.S. National Science Foundation. So thank you all for being here. In just a note that you'll notice that our panelists represent a mix of federal and private funders. So something to keep in mind throughout our discussion today. In just a moment, I'm going to hand it over to Brett to kick us off, and we'll hear a 5-minute overview or so from each panelist about their program highlights and whatever they'd like to share with you. And then we'll open it up for discussion. We have a few moderated questions, and then we definitely want to hear from you as well. And we have a little under an hour. So again, thank you all for being here. And I think that's over to you, Brett.
All right. For the folks out in the coffee room, if you don't come in, you don't get any money. So you should come in. It's your choice. Wow, it's great to be here. It was almost exactly a year ago I was on this same funding panel, and Ashley Sands from IMLS was up here too. And I think Ashley and I did not imagine that we would both not work for our respective organizations anymore. I was with the NEH and she was with IMLS, and we both got doged. So I didn't think I'd ever be back here again. So thank you for inviting me. I've been funding in the digital humanities, digital library space for a long time, about 20 years or so. And so it's wonderful to come to CNI and see all the projects that are happening and see what everybody's working on. But I am very happy to say that I'm working now at Schmidt Sciences, and I think many of you probably never heard of Schmidt Sciences. So I thought I would do a very quick overview so you know what the heck we're talking about here, and to encourage you to consider applying yourself for some of your work. So let me jump into it. So Schmidt Sciences is a philanthropy. We have offices in New York. We have one here in Washington, D.C., in Crystal City. And Schmidt Sciences funds a variety of different things. Astrophysics is a big thing that we fund. AI, science systems, climate. We have a lot of climate stuff and oceanography, biosciences. We were founded by Eric and Wendy Schmidt. Of course, Eric Schmidt used to be the CEO of Google. So we have what they call in the philanthropy world a living donor, meaning we're a little bit different from the Mellon Foundation, because at the Mellon Foundation, like Andrew W. Mellon doesn't come in the room and say, "Hey, let's talk about the grants," you know. But Eric and Wendy do. They are very much part of what we do. So the program that I work on, the humanities program, actually falls under the AI and Advanced Computing Institute, right? So it's basically focusing on AI and the application of AI and data science to a variety of different disciplines, and humanities is one of those disciplines. So let me talk more about that. So these are the programs that fall under the AI Institute at Schmidt Sciences. So we have trustworthy AI research. We have a fellowship program called AI 2050. We have the AI at Work program, which is sort of a economics program. And we have HAVI, which is one that I work. It's called the Humanities and AI Virtual Institute. Everyone just calls it HAVI, though, for short. So let's talk a little bit about HAVI and what we fund here. So basically, we are funding digital humanities and sort of digital library kind of research, but specifically involving the advanced use of AI. So kind of an ideal project of ours might be one that involves PIs from the humanities and PIs from computer science who are working together. And they're hopefully advancing, they hopefully have a really great humanities research question. They also have a really interesting AI computer science research question, because we want to kind of do advancements in both areas. We recognize the fact that AI can be a useful tool for lots of research practices in the humanities. But on the other hand, AI doesn't work very well in some areas, and we want to make the AI actually work better. So we want really good research results, both from the AI side and the humanities side is kind of what we're looking for. Okay. Yesterday, we had two big announcements, which serendipitously happened to land on the first day of CNI. So yesterday, one of the big announcements was 23 new awards. So we are a new organization. These are our first awards. So this is a very important day. Because oftentimes people will say to me, what do you fund over there, Brett? And I'm like, soon we will have an announcement. You can see what we fund. Because I do think it is useful to see what other grants we have awarded before you want to apply, because you can get a better sense of the breadth of what we're funding. So if you haven't seen it, peruse our website. You will find the list of the 23. I'll just mention a couple as examples. We gave one to Wellesley College called Seeing Through Style, Multimodal Advances for Iconographic Analysis. So these people are studying medieval manuscripts using AI. So there's an art history kind of a project. UC Santa Barbara. One of the PIs, as you can see, is Ben Lee, who is one of our keynote speakers yesterday. And, this team is working with Zooniverse. They're doing kind of a crowdsourcing AI project, but really exploring Black newspapers. It's a newspaper kind of digitization analysis kind of a project. UC Berkeley, David Baman, Taylor Arnold, Allison Cooper, Lauren Tilden, very well-known folks in the DH space, are using AI to study film and television at the large scale. So, like I said, I'm just giving you a few examples to show you that it is a breadth of different types of projects, doing different things, sometimes developing new methods and techniques, sometimes directly addressing specific humanities questions, etc. So that's just a couple of examples. Jump on our website and take a look at all 23. Announcement number 2 is a brand new call. Applications are due the 13th of March. But basically, if you're interested in applying, please do. Again, as I said, they're kind of like dual AI and humanities kinds of thing going on there. But one interesting thing I do want to note is that unlike the NEH, Schmidt is a global funder. So you can be from anywhere in the world. You could have people from international universities, for example, on your team, or international libraries, etc. It's totally fine and encouraged. In fact, if you have an international team, that's totally fine. Okay. These are the funding levels we're doing, kind of like I did at NEH, kind of a level 1, level 2 kind of a thing. We've got up to $300K for early projects and up to $800K for more mature, bigger projects. But definitely, if you jump on our website and take a look at the RFP, you'll see we have some webinars coming up. If you have questions, or you can always get in touch with us. Again, that's our website, and there's a QR code if you really want to pull your phone out and do all that, or you could just Google us. Anyway, that is our general email box, javi@schmidtsciences.org. It's also my email address is up there. Yet another QR code. This one will take you to a contact form if you want to sign up for like our newsletter and all that kind of good stuff. That's all I've got. Thank you all very much.
Thanks, Brett. Awesome. And a reminder that we'll have time for questions and discussion at the end. Now we'll hear from Sharon.
I'm going to stay here. Once again, my name is Sharon Burney. I'm a program officer with CLEAR. And our work is accomplished by a relatively small staff of about 20 geographically distributed individuals across the country, with the largest concentration in the DC area. The grants team is made of myself, Allison Pope, Jane Larson, Lizzie Albert, and Alice Rubin, and it's managed by Louise Quazagra. Together, we administrate our 2 active re-granting programs from application to final report. Although we're talking about funding opportunities today, it's important to note that CLEAR is not actually a funding agency for the Recordings at Risk and Digitizing Hidden Collections program. We receive generous funding from the Melling Foundation, and CLEAR acts as the re-granting agency. So just as we receive proposals and reports from institutions, we also send proposals and reports to Melling and other funding organizations. Slide, please. The first re-granting program I want to highlight is our Recordings at Risk program. And CLEAR came to recognize their unique challenges that are facing performing audio and audiovisual digitization and description. The first and biggest of these is that much AV content is at high risk of being lost due to physical degradation and changing environmental conditions. As materials disappear, cultural history does too. The second major challenge is that specialized training is often necessary to address description, storage, and maintenance needs for these materials, which staff may not possess. Third, storage cost post-digitization can be prohibitive, so organizations may not have the existing digital infrastructure necessary to store and maintain preservation copies, production copies, and access. The final challenge that we recognize is the tricky intellectual property situations surrounding AV content. So all the projects that have been funded through Recordings at Risk have had to work through some, if not all, of these challenges. To date, CLEAR has completed 12 cycles for RER, funding a total of 211 projects involving more than 178 unique institutions and awarding over $6.1 million. Our Recordings at Risk projects are one-year projects, and the awards range from $10,000 to $60,000. The assessment criteria for Recordings at Risk are four primary: impact, urgency, potential for preservation, and approach to access. So the emphasis for Recordings at Risk is grounded in the need for preservation through digitization and the recognition that the materials have varying levels of appropriate access given legal and ethical concerns. Recordings at Risk awards are smaller with shorter timelines and have a very narrow focus on the activities directly related to digitization work. Eligibility. So to be considered for funding, you must be a U.S. or Canadian nonprofit, academic, research, or cultural heritage organization. So we've now extended it to Canada. The organization and its collections must also be located within the United States or Canada or related entities such as American Samoa, Guam, Puerto Rico, or the Northwest Territories or Yukon. Government units and their agencies are eligible so long as their primary function is cultural heritage and preservation. And tribal and indigenous government units are also eligible. So if you have any questions about whether or not your organization may be eligible for the grant, you can always email us at recordingsatrisk@clear.org. An eligible organization can only submit one application per cycle. So if an organization submits more than one proposal, CLEAR will contact the responsible parties and ask them to select just one for consideration. So a common question we receive are about different campuses of a single academic entity. So for the purpose of the program, we treat each individual campus of a university system as its own distinct unit institution. So example, if UC Berkeley and UC Riverside, they can submit separate applications and would not be required to join forces or a single institution. Recordings at Risk does not have an official list of allowed or disallowed formats, but we welcome applications as long as the format is analog, audio, and or visual, is time-based in nature, so no still photographs or slides. And you can find a qualified external service provider or vendor that can perform the digital reformatting in an appropriate way for the format and condition of the physical materials. So it's important to note that the program was designed with analog to digital reformatting in mind. So while born digital AV content is no less important and surely at risk, it is not the focus of this particular program at the moment. There are, of course, a few formats that blur the lines when it comes to that analog-digital distinction, such as digital audio tapes. This particular format, for instance, is eligible and is certainly at risk. Files on a hard drive, however, in need of digital reformatting are not eligible. So don't hesitate to reach out to double-check the eligibility of your specific format. So our timeline for Cycle 13 began on November 3rd, 2025, when the call for proposals opened. Proposals are due February 24th, 2026. Recipients will be announced in early August 2026, and we always notify the applicants individually before the public announcement is made. All projects must last between 3 and 12 months. For Cycle 13, all project work should take place between September 1st, 2026 and August 31st, 2027. There is another cycle that's set to open in late 2027. So we encourage you to sign up for the Grants and Programs newsletter for any upcoming cycle announcements. Our second regranting program, I'm going to breeze through a little quickly, is our Digitizing Hidden Collections, Amplifying Unheard Voices, which launched in 2021. The current cycle for Cohort 3 initial applications did close in October. We are currently in conversation with the Mellon Foundation regarding future calls for the digitizing hidden collections, but we think another one will possibly open again in August. The thematic focus of Amplifying on Her Voices aims to fund projects that propose to digitize materials that deepen the public understanding of the histories of people of color and other communities and populations whose work, experiences, and perspectives have been insufficiently recognized or unattended in digital collections. These often hidden histories include, but are not necessarily limited to, those of Black, Indigenous, Latin, people of color, women, gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, non-binary, and other queer and queer gender people and communities, immigrants, displaced populations, blind, deaf, disabled people and communities, and colonized, disenfranchised, enslaved, and incarcerated people. The Digitizing Hidden Collections AUV program awards range from $50,000 to $300,000, and they are 1 to 3 year projects. This program coheres around 5 core values: public knowledge. This program fuels the creation and dissemination of digitized special collections and archives as a public good. Broad representation. The program supports digitization projects that will thoroughly capture and share the untapped stories of people, communities, and populations who are underrepresented in digital collections in ways that contribute to a more complete understanding of human history. Authentic partnership. This program prioritizes projects that foreground meaningful engagement with the underserved communities whose stories the source materials tell, and that build inclusive teams across institutional and geographic locations. Sustainable infrastructures. The program promotes forward-thinking strategies ensuring the long-term availability, discoverability, and interconnectedness of digitized content. And last, community-centered access. This program advocates for approaches to access, description, and outreach that make digitized content as widely available and useful as possible within legal and ethical constraints, centering digital inclusion and respect for materials' local contexts. As mentioned previously, the current cycle of GHC Cohort 4 is in the initial application phase. All organizations that are accepted to the final application phase will be notified in mid-February 2026. We anticipate providing a greater level of support to these organizations invited to the final round to help them develop their initial applications into competitive final applications. This will involve a number of individuals from our community, including members of our review panel, to assist in an applicant support webinar series. The series provides the applicant with different aspects of the final proposal: budget, digitization and preservation plans, collections, assessments, and right ethics and reuse, with presentations and question and answer time from professionals with expertise in these subject areas. The final application is due May 5th, and we anticipate making the public announcement of the funded projects in November of 2026. And last slide is a thank you. If you're interested in signing up for the Grants and Programs newsletter, we also have an outstanding Clear DLF job board, and you can contact us at both program boxes at hiddencollections@clear.org or recordingsatrisk@clear.org for any more questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Sharon. That's such important work, especially now. Our plan is to hear from Kaffie next, and we actually don't have slides for this next piece.
I do want to thank Kate's Ward for inviting me to join this panel. She's a big thinker and who can see into the future and actually explain it. And I realized once I met her in 2019 at the Library of Congress that I had to get smarter really fast. So you all are lucky. A little background about the library. You would all know the Library of Congress, but the fundraising situation, you may not. It's a public-private partnership. Everything that you see publicly is funded privately. So the exhibitions, interns and fellows, signature programs like the National Book Festival, those are all funded privately. So in that public-private partnership, we spent centuries building the public component of the public-private partnership, and only decades building the private component of the public-private partnership. Say that like 5 times fast and you'll get that. But so in that building of the private part of the public-private partnership, we started with Dr. Hayden. I mean, in terms of, in the past, it had been project fundraising. What the librarian wanted to fund, we funded through a very small office, through a very small group of high net worth folks, It's called the James Madison Council. So when Dr. Hayden came in, she wanted to democratize fundraising, much like her vision to, and connect with all Americans and have them understand what the library was doing. She wanted it to be a democratized fundraising. Imagine my surprise when I came in and there wasn't a Friends of the Library of Congress. Every library has a Friends group, right? And I remember going through names, which we named this group, Dr. Hayden, and I had a whole list of really good names. And she was like, how about Friends? And I was like, yes, that sounds right. So we have a Friends of the Library of Congress. We've democratized our channels around fundraising so that we're not over-relying on our major gifts and over-relying on the same set of donors. That James Madison Council, when I came in, was 45 people and they're couples. Now we have 92. We have a goal of 100 by 2026 to celebrate our semi-quincentennial. We don't know if we'll get there, right? Given the funding environment that we have. So we can talk a little bit about that. I feel like this could be a therapy session for all of us out there. And I'm here for that. So we democratized that. We reached out to fund, foundations and that have not traditionally given to us. Mellon had not given to us for 20 years. We came up with a proposal that was really, that was 3 parts that, one of Kate's leads was asking the collections different questions using different types of technology, right? So those learnings that we had with Mellon led to next gifts that were primary going forward and how we create some foundational sustainable support. And I can tell a little bit about that. But back in March of this year, I was asked by our executive committee to report on how are you handling risk? And I think all of you are trying to figure out how to handle risk as well. And, how do we understand the current funding environment? And, uncertainty is, a characterization of the funding environment, political, social, cultural. And uncertainty causes confusion and is the death of philanthropy, right? It's the death of fundraising. When people are confused about what they're giving for, they're confused about what the environment is, what they should be doing. At that uncertainty, people don't give, right? So how do you create certainty? Through consistency, So that's what we were trying to do. We need to stay informed about our current and, our funding environment, and we have to adapt. So we talked to a lot of organizations, the Smithsonian, at the time, the Kennedy Center, Mount Vernon, White House Historical, all of our comparables in terms of what are they facing now in this political environment here in DC as a cultural institution. We have to understand national trends, right? There are fewer donors giving larger gifts, right? There's more complexity in how those donors give, more requirements on organizations, greater scrutiny of the giving, fewer lower dollar donors, changing demographics of giving, changing loyalty. The FY25 for the library was a very successful year. We solicited and closed $36 million. We also documented another $36 million in planned gifts. That's a huge, wonderful year. We also decreased the number of donors by 7%. Now that reflects national trends. So while we're really pleased with these mega gifts that we received, one to buy a Stradivari viola, one to really provide foundational support for our interns and fellows program, we still have to address the issue that we're losing donors. And how do we do that? And when we have very particular channels we have to manage. So again, it's really about doubling down on communication, doubling down on reporting, doubling down on transparency. And that's what we've been able to do in the last couple years. Last years. It feels like years, but it's actually months, right? In this context. So recurring contacts, monthly, newsletters, impact reports, annual reports back to donors, especially with regard to endowment. These were all new to the library in terms of our reporting, in terms of transparency. Recurring engagement. We lost one of our signature opportunities to engage our donors with the Gershwin Prize. And how do we replace that? Well, we just communicated a lot more all the time. And we found and we surveyed our donors. What are we doing right? What do you need to do differently? They were very calm. They were very sweet. And, donors cannot be sweet all the time, but they were really thoughtful to us about what that was. We surveyed 1,000 donors, got a 25% response rate. We are doing well. We need to do better. We need more online programming because a lot of our donors don't get to the library. And so we need to manage that. We need to talk about collections more, et cetera, et cetera. So you know what I'm talking about. It's all about the consistency in terms of in an environment of uncertainty. We need to retain our new donors, right? We don't want to lose them. We created a welcome series. We focus on our mid-level donors. Those are 35% of your annual giving, but they represent 5% of your annual giving population. Survey the donors. Draw on new streams of opportunity when you can. What we don't know about next year is so much. We'll continue to consistently plan the work and work as a plan and communicate and adapt. That is our model going forward. I'm happy to have any conversation because I can learn as much from you. And I've been writing notes about the funding opportunities, so I'm in community here. So I'll leave it there.
Thanks, Kaffie. Okay, this is very high tech. We're going to hear from Ross now. Thanks to Paige and the tech team for making this happen. Ross, you're on.
So thank you for having me. I'm not in the US at the moment. Obviously, I'm in London. Arcadia is a family philanthropy with a London office. Arcadia has 3 main areas of giving: recording cultural heritage, conserving and restoring nature, and promoting open access to knowledge. And I am the director of Open Access Arcadia. Arcadia is a family philanthropy. We have 5 living donors on our donor board, all family. And then we have a larger advisory board, which includes Heather Joseph. This is a little bit about our style of giving. Time is our most valuable commodity. We make fewer, more deliberative decisions. We prefer longer, larger grants. In my portfolio, we're giving out 8 to 10-year grants these days. And we fund organizations for as long as they do good work aligned with our priorities. So within the open access funding area, our aim is to improve access to human knowledge, and our grants help make important information free for anyone, anywhere to access and use now and in the future. We have 3 priority areas. The first is copyright and intellectual property, because that often stifles access to knowledge and the use of knowledge and the reuse of knowledge. Then the second area is books. We're trying to get more in-copyright scholarly books available for everyone online to read. And discoverability, helping people find legal, free-to-read versions of government documents, publicly funded research, standards, and laws. So we're not just concerned here at Arcadia with research, we actually expand into law and standards documents too. So we've got quite a wide remit. Recent grantees this year, we gave $5 million to publicresource.org, doing really great work on making standards and laws available. We've also given to the Invest in Open Infrastructure Fund for Network Adoption, and that's alongside Wellcome Trust and for-profit entities putting into that fund as well, like Digital Science, Carja, and EBSCO. So pooling our monies to make good things happen. And then thirdly, there are library futures to help library negotiations with vendors. So this is my final slide now. I've probably whizzed through my slides, but we were told to keep it short. So these are kind of my future visions, what I'm looking at over the next 3 to 5 years. Obviously, Arcadia works on quite a long timescale. I'm really excited about the publish, review, curate system for academic publishing. I think it's high time that we actually publish things first and review after that, decoupling those processes. Traditionally, you would review the manuscript first before you publish it. Now we're seeing such a flood of manuscripts that I think it's too expensive to do it that way around, to review before you publish. I think we really have to publish and then review afterwards. In Europe, we're seeing a massive expansion of secondary publishing rights. There's about 7 different European countries now that have secondary publishing rights. The most recent ones include Bulgaria and Slovenia, and there's no embargo on when they can secondarily publish their work. So they can publish it with the publisher behind a paywall and then the same day make it available in their institutional repository, and that's enshrined in their national law. So I see that as a very positive development that we're encouraging with our work, like the Knowledge Rights 21 program. This is something that I perhaps like some help from the audience here in the US. I'd really like for Arcadia in future to be working on open access to electronic theses and dissertations and make that the norm in the USA, because I'm pretty sure it's the norm in the UK and it's the norm in many other European countries. But for some reason in the US, electronic theses and dissertations are often captured by commercial vendors. And so I think there's something that Arcadia could do to ameliorate that issue. So I'd like help from the audience with that. And then finally, more appreciation of great open access monographs. For instance, through work with the American Council of Learned Societies, we have open access book prizes to reward some of the best open access books that are out there. So yeah, that's our kind of future visions for the next three to 5 years. I've got an AI generated image there to kind of show you what we're all about, releasing the information from books, making it available from everyone. And that's what we're here for. So thank you.
Thanks for being here with us, Ross. And Plato, we have you up next.
Yes, good morning. My name is Plato Schmidt. I am a temporary IPA rotator in the Directorate for Computer Information Science and Engineering in the Office of Advanced Cyber Infrastructure. I will briefly introduce the Findable, Accessible, Interoperable, Reusable Open Science Program, which represents OAC strategic investments in open science. Next slide. The development of OAC strategic investment in open science include previous Dear Colleague letters and a program solicitation. From 2019 to 2023, DCLs related to open science included reproducibility and replicability in science, open science for research data, and effective practices for data, and a program solicitation called FAROS, RCN, which stands for Research Coordination Network. The Cyber Infrastructure for Public Access and Open Science program description was developed in 2024 to formalize OAC's strategic investments in open science, followed by the Dear Colleague letter, Leveraging Cyber Infrastructure for Research Data Management. The FAROS program solicitation, NSF 25-533, developed in 2025, replaces FAROS RCN 2022-553. Next slide, please. The FAROS program solicitation advances the FAIR competencies, capabilities, and community building themes of the Cyber Infrastructure for Public Access and Open Science program description. FAROS includes 2 research tracks of focus, disciplinary improvements and cross-cutting improvements. Awards are up to $600,000 up to 3 years. The deadline for the FAROS program solicitation is April 8th, 2026. Annually thereafter, the deadline is the second Wednesday in April. And as you can see on the slide, these are some themes. This is not exhaustive, but addressing data formats, metadata standards, and harmonization, which have been presented in some of the presentations thus far, addressing data curation, provenance, record keeping, and organization of data and storage, and improving interoperability, reproducibility, and sustainability of data. Next slide, please. In addition to the merit review principles and criteria, the FAROS program includes solicitation-specific review criteria, open science impact, leveraging cyber infrastructure, and measurable outcomes are additional solicitation-specific review criteria for FAROS proposals. Reviewers reference these additional FAROS solicitation-specific review criteria during the panel review process. Next slide, please. The FY25 FAROS program awarded 11 awards in fiscal year 2025, including 1 conference award. The projects highlighted in yellow include co-funding from other NSF directorates such as Geoscience, ENG, Engineering, MPS, Mathematical and Physical Science, Data CI, which is Data Cyber Infrastructure, and Biological Science. Awards includes both disciplinary and cross-cutting improvements in collaboratives. Project Award 253-1754, TOFR, was also co-funded from another OAC program, the NAIR pilot. NAIR stands for National Artificial Intelligence Research Resource. Next slide, please. This is a quad chart of OAC 253-1754 project. Disciplinary Improvements Dark Matter Commons, a fair and open science infrastructure for astrophysical discovery. This project proposes development of a fair line infrastructure for astrophysical data. A quad chart is a unique high-level infographic communicating project details. This project was co-funded with the Directorate for Mathematical and Physical Science and the NAIR pilot project. Next slide, please. Here are our references for OAC program and funding opportunities. The first link, you can access all the funding opportunities within OAC. The second is for the NEAR pilot. And then the third is for the FAROS program. Next slide, please. If you're interested in becoming a reviewer, you can visit the link or use the QR code. We are always in need of reviewers. And actually, I'll go off script and say that's how I get my start as a digital initiative librarian at FSU, and then also a doctoral student as a reviewer for OAC, which eventually led to current position. Next slide, please. Here are some additional resources for proposers. Include the NSF Proposal and Award Policy and Procedure Guide, also known as PAPG, updates to NSF priorities and executive orders related to federal funding. The FAROS solicitation extends and modifies the PAPG. If something is not covered in the FAROS solicitation, please refer to the PAPG. Next slide, please. That's it. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Plato. And now questions from each of the panelists. So I'd love to hear each of your perspectives on how funding priorities for digital scholarship and research infrastructure have evolved in the past, say, 2 to 3 years. And Brett, maybe you can kick us off. We'll cycle back to you.
Hello. How have things changed in the last couple of years? I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess the big elephant in the room is that its funding landscape has changed a lot, right? I think that my biggest concern is what things are going to look like in 2 or 3 years from now, you know? I feel like the funding landscape from the federal side changed significantly, obviously, this year. And, you know, when I come to CNI, right, and you watch these great proposals, that oftentimes they're projects that got an IMLS grant or an NEH grant 2 or 3 or 4 years prior, right? So what will the landscape look like in 2 or 3 years when those grants are no longer available? How is it going to change the way in which people do their work? And I wish I had some brilliant idea on how to solve that problem, but I definitely think it is something the whole community needs to be concerned about. I'll stop there.
Other panelists?
Yeah, I guess to piggyback off of Brett, it's changed significantly, especially in the last year. What we have noticed, because we are a re-granting agency, is definitely an increase in applications for an already competitive grant. The grants that we have are very competitive, and I am really concerned with what the future looks like from a year to 2 years now. I wish we could fund everybody that comes to us, but we can't, and we're doing our best to try to make these grants equitable in many ways. I'm concerned about what this long-term effects on us physically and physiologically, and sustainability and staff retention. And, you know, we're just human, right? And we're just trying to live and survive and continue to go forward. We're still doing the good fight over in Clear, and we continue to do the good fight over in Clear. And all we can do is keep fighting.
So I think it's all about going local, right? When we've talked about funding and worked with our funders, it's about using the technology to take the collections of the library and create locality to it. One of the tasks as a fundraiser was, how do you make the library relevant to people who live in California or in Topeka, Kansas, or in Eastern Oklahoma? And so, the technology is a vehicle for that. And in this age where the magic of in-person, off-screen, human scale is important, I feel like we have an opportunity there to use the technology in a way that locates the personal, locates these big institutions, in particular the library, even the Smithsonian, in the community. And we've had success. We have a new program we started out fiscal year 25 with a grant from the Gates Foundation and Carnegie around a program we call Local, which we're using collections our library collections to co-create experiences in Eastern Oklahoma and in Cleveland. So it's a pilot process, and I can't wait to show you or everybody about that. And it's, I think, the closer you get to the people that where you can have an impact, the more opportunity you have to create some relevancy. I think I'll stop there in terms of that.
What you're going to see is a reduction in program solicitations. Only thing I can speak of is things that are public. Well, the NSF is moving. Actually, once I leave here, I have to go back to my office and get my box. So I shouldn't have said that. But to be honest, to be serious, you're going to see more private and public collaborations. As I tell the Pharaoh's PIs, it's more of a cohort, and I encourage, and I am a strong advocate for PIs. As a data librarian, I support all scientists research, and I always make the Pharaoh's PIs think of themselves as a cohort and not competitive. So it's going to be more collaboration among PIs, among shrinking budgets and solicitation. Thanks.
Yeah, can I respond also to what everybody has said too? I agree with that. What I found is one of our re-granting programs to Hidden Collections is open to collaborative projects. And I think one of the key is looking, federal seems to be more on STEM-focused projects, funding still there, humanity-centered, even though Brett came and blew that up this morning, which is great. But looking at more collaborative, private funding, thinking very strategically and innovatively about how you can describe your projects in more innovative ways. I think that's a strategic key. And to collaborate with other organizations to build a bigger project with greater deliverables.
I think that's really good advice. Thank you. We have one more, I think, sort of maybe moderated question for the panel. And then if folks want to start queuing up behind the microphones, that'll be an indication to switch over to the therapy session, as Kaffie put it. So I'd love to hear from you all on kind of strategies you found to be most compelling for demonstrating like long-term sustainability of digital projects and infrastructure. Whoever wants to jump in. Would it be you?
Can I start?
Please.
Okay. So my experience at the library is changing libraries is the hardest part of any project and infrastructure. And in any grant that we've received, it's a really important lessons learned is to have everybody involved in the decision making and be involved in what it means. Almost getting the grant is almost the easiest part. And as you know, that's not the easy part, right? So really engaging more deeply and holistically around existing staff on the ground so that leadership as well as the program officers are the ones who are going to execute it are deeply involved in the conversations and the lessons learned and facing the challenges together. Because what you thought you might end up with, what your outcomes you thought were going to be, are actually not the outcomes that are going to be sustainable within the organization. So what we learned from Mellon was that we built capacity with NTEs, right, not to exceed. And what we realized is that those NTEs take the information with them instead of creating some longevity and that knowledge within the library itself. And all of our FTEs, our full-time equivalents, were, onboarding these folks about what it means to work with the library. So our next grant was to really facilitate the expertise of our colleagues internally to give them interesting new projects to work on, but also backfill and to bring NTEs in a way that allowed us to build capacity. So taking every lesson learned and making sure that we're communicating it up and down. And when you don't, not good things happen. So I do think that that's creating sustainability learning. With Mellon, we had a great opportunity to build out our interns and fellows program because it was a Jenga. We had different funding sources to build out a funding program, an interns and fellows program. And we realized once we lost Mellon funding, it was just going to go off a chip. It was just then again Jenga, and we would have an accordion number of interns and fellows at the library. We were able to use those lessons learned to appeal to a donor to be like, if you don't help us now, we will lose all this effort and we will lose all this learning. And they understood that and they wanted to help people. So again, getting local, getting as close to the impact that you can have to people is important to sustainability, as well as engaging all aspects of the library. Because if they're not involved, leadership to the program person in every aspect of it, then you don't have that you're not learning across the board. So.
Yeah, I'll jump in after that to build up on that capacity. One thing, as far as our projects are concerned, I think one of the things before you even start a project, you need to be having these discussions about long-term sustainability and infrastructure from the beginning and implant that into it. And especially if you're going to apply for one of our CLEAR grants, that's one of the things the review panel is going to look for. It's a hint. Secondly, I've also been encouraging people. I like to see projects that include sometimes fellows and bringing in staff, and you can include staffing in our hidden collections, AUV. But I also try to encourage people to use that, maybe if you hire somebody temporarily for the project, but that could be also, once it's completed, a vehicle of approaching administration or, the higher ups to basically say, this is why we need these additional people. We can create this. So use that as a vehicle to fight for more staffing or the retention of staffing.
Plato, would you like to weigh in?
Yes. Proposals from EPSCoR states. EPSCoR stands for Established Program to Stimulate Competitive Research. So definitely, as Kaffie mentioned, Oklahoma, I know it's one. I haven't memorized all, but definitely look at the website, NSF website for EPSCoR states. Then also conference proposals. I did not promote that. Conference proposal up to 50,000, internal review, and then up to 100,000 with 2 internal reviews. So I really encourage collaboration between the libraries, library IT, campus IT, and various disciplinary domains. For one of the conference proposals that were awarded this year, it was from construction engineering. Even though we were not at recruiting for a conference proposal, the PI sent in a program abstract. I in turn shared it with the engineering program director, and we both co-funded it. So definitely I'd like to put a push from EPSCoR states and then also conference proposals. Thank you.
Long-term sustainability has been one of my favorite projects I've been working on forever. It's a hard one. There's a lot of good resources out there. There's a socio-technical roadmap is a really good thing to consult as you're planning your project. And I think Sharon said from the get-go, that's something you want to do. Ithaca has put out a lot of good information about sustainability of digital projects. But I would also say at the end of the day, you need money. You should plan well, but you need money. I think it's last year I announced a brand new NEH grant program specifically to give you money for sustainability of projects. That didn't happen, but I think we need that. I think that funders often focus on the exciting new research. What can you do right now? And that's great. You need money for that. But I think funders also need to be willing to fund the boring infrastructure work, right? If you funded, or if I feel like if I'm a funder and I funded you to create some resource, a community resource, a database, for example, that the community relies on, I think it's incumbent upon me as a funder to help you financially to ensure that we continue to make that resource available to the community. But that's something that is difficult. A lot of funders, I think, have trouble wrapping their heads around that kind of funding, but I think it's important, particularly in the digital age, because I think so much of what you're doing doesn't result just in an academic paper, right? It results in an actual piece of software that needs to be maintained. So,
thank you. I want to check back in with Ross and see if you want to weigh in on any of these questions.
Yeah, I just wanted to second what Brett said there. I think the long-term digital preservation is so important to think about. Arcadia donors are really interested in digital preservation for open access, and I think endowments are a really good way of ensuring long-term sustainability, particularly on the financials. So we have helped MIT Press set up an endowment to support their open access work. We also support the Wikimedia endowment to keep Wikipedia online forever. So I just say endowments are a very good way of ensuring long-term sustainability for digital projects.
Awesome. Thank you. And we'll shift to audience questions. And I think I saw you queuing up first. Please.
Nathan Tolman, AP Trust. I want to probe at this same topic a little further. And it's going to sound like an obtuse question, but for your organizations, what does sustainable infrastructure mean? What is it actually defined as? Because sometimes it seems like it's used in a way, a balanced budget, foreseeable plans that the organization or the infrastructure provider, has some due diligence and fiduciary responsibility. Other times it seems to be used as a stand-in for something that will be around in 30 or 40 plus years as this long-term entity. And those aren't always synonymous. And so I was just wondered, could you break down what do you mean when you say sustainable infrastructure for your funding programs? Thank you.
Sure. You want to start? I guess I'll start. Nobody wants to start. Well, we do a lot of different programs at Clear, so I think it means different things for us. So I'm going to speak primarily from the grants team. And when we think about sustainable, we really changed everything and how we approached everything when we started the Amplifying Underheard Voices program. And we had to go back to basics and review how we approach community. We changed all of the language. We created, for me personally, sustainability means a lot of things. And it starts with the people and staffing. And it starts with tailoring approach based on resources. So we created the applicant support webinar series because we know that a lot of smaller organizations only have 1 or 2 staff there, and they can't come to a 3-hour program on the grant application. So it could be creating a support webinar series that you put online, and then we bring in experts to help people who may not have the expertise to write grants because they're too busy doing everything else. And so all of our resources are available: the slides, the webinars, the question and answers we have after every webinar series. And our inbox is always open to answer any questions, no matter what. And so that they walk away, even if they don't get awarded a grant, they walk away with a skill set to be able to write larger grants that they weren't able to do before, or to reapply next year and hopefully get awarded. That's one of the ways we look at it. Our recording service is a smaller project for smaller organizations where you have to do external digitization because you may not have the equipment that you need to digitize in-house, or you may not have the expertise in-house to digitize the specific formats of what you're trying to digitize. So that's a smaller, lighter lift to hopefully make you apply for the next round and expand your collection and your digitization project. So that's one way. And one way we sustain is by going out and meeting the people where they're at. So when we talk about going local, so we travel a lot now to smaller forums so we can meet public libraries and we can meet archival organizations and we can have one-on-one conversations if we're ever at a conference booth. That's where I want to sit down and try to speak to indigenous organizations and say, yeah, you might not have enough in one group, but you can do a regional project and come together and have this. So that's sustainability to me.
Can I add? So the question of endowment, at the Library of Congress, we have a lot of trust funds that are invested, obviously, for income purposes, obviously, to run programs. And some of those programs we don't do anymore. So creating endowment, and it's tough because we are not going to dissolve that endowment because we have a fiduciary responsibility to that. But how do you evolve those endowment? How do you evolve the gift language that allow you to learn, continuously learn? And what are those learnings? That's the sustainability, I think, component that we're trying to move the library to, is what do you learn about yourself through whatever initiative to be able to move forward? Now we have gift agreements that allow for us to migrate that endowment, those funds, in a way that makes sense to the library. And in fact, our large gift this year to support interns and fellows, the donor and I had a very good conversation about, like, well, in 50 years, are you going to have interns and fellows? Like, what do I do? What do I tell my children when they're or my grandchildren about this endowment? Like, is there a mechanism? We don't want that money just sitting there when you're not doing that. So how do we create that kind of conversation around the materials and the documentation that allow you to evolve? And so sustainability, it's a great question. I think it's when we talk about sustainability, we want to keep that program going, but maybe that's not what you do. And so you have to create some flexibility in terms of your documentation and the way in which you think strategically about things so that you can continue to learn. And I think that's a problem, an obstacle or an opportunity at the library that we've been working through in terms of how we use those funds better.
Yes, sustainability for the FAROS program. Definitely with the FAROS PIs workshop meeting last year, that was the question asked to all of the PIs, how to sustain, and this was in year 3 of a 3-year project. So I agree with what Sharon said. Sustainability should be thought of at the beginning, not year 3. I didn't mean to say it like that. So please. But all the FAROS PIs, they know I support them. So, but definitely integration of the finished product. I can give another example. Currently, there's an ECR proposal in which the funded research allow for development of a PID integration into electronic lab notebook. I'm not going to name the product. So I asked the question, how is the funded research, is it going to be available in the free version and then also the paid version? Is actually both. So integration of funded research broadly. And also I look for partnerships between a university and then also public-private partnerships. So definitely sustainability is extending the funded research beyond the funded cycle. Thanks.
Well, that's good. Ross, anything from you? We have a little bit of a queue, so let's keep it going with another question over here. And we have just under 2 minutes.
You said just under 2 minutes?
Yeah.
All right. So when I was recently at the National Endowment for the Humanities with Brett, hi Brett, I was starting a new grant program and I was desperate for some statement from the community that I was serving of what priorities were over the next 2 years. I know that in some natural sciences, these sorts of 10-year statements exist. I think astronomy is one of them. Do you think that this is something that would be useful for our community to put together to help align funders around common goals in this current resource-poor environment? Or is that not necessarily the best use of our time and resources right now as we're trying to shore up what we have?
I think a statement would be great. I think we were talking earlier when we were discussing, we were saying about infrastructure, for example. I think what's going to happen about 1 or 2 years from now, we're going to see a great need for infrastructural funding. So that would be one way to say, look, this is not sustainable. Let's pull some numbers together and show what's happened in the last year or 2 as a result of this, and funding needs to shift in these ways. It would be very valuable as a community to address funders.
As a follow-up, yes, definitely we need to hear from the community. So I agree that a statement from the community to the funders would help support that.
Thank you.
100%, yeah. I was just talking to Saeed about the fact that you'd be surprised, funders don't often hear from the field. Like, people are maybe intimidated to tell their funder, you're funding the wrong thing, you should be funding this. It's also difficult, to be honest with you, to get researchers to clearly and crisply articulate what kind of grant programs they need. That's not always easy, but if, for example, the CNI community could articulate specifically what funding needs are not being addressed, I think funders would very much appreciate that information.
Thank you. I'm going
to add on just one thing, which is hearing from the community. I'm Ellen Katz-Ramsey from Big Ten Academic Alliance, and I want to bring back, this is something to hear. When you're talking about collaborative proposals, please broaden who you consider in those collaborative proposals. The sustainability of funding to individual institutions is very difficult right now. And if there are 501c3s like mine and others like CLEAR, et cetera, that we can work together to support smaller and individual institutions, that's a win for everybody. Thank you.
Great note to go out on. Join me in thanking the panelists and the CNI team, including the tech team. Thank you all.